Okay, I believe you're live, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Welcome to Sunrise School Division August 31st regular board meeting. My name is Paul Mang. I'm the chair of the board. I'm going to call our meeting to order, and we're going to sing O Canada. We're going to have O Canada sing by Cole Parview School. If you are able to do so, please rise.
Oh,
So I noticed I was muted. Sorry. Thank you, Cole Parview School, for O Canada. On our agenda,
Paul, can I just interject? Trustee Reed can hear us, but he can't seem to speak, so he asked if someone would ask him to join the meeting.
about someone to invite him. Is that what you're asking, Don?
Someone to invite him, yes.
Okay. Jared, can you take care of that for us?
yeah, he's in the meeting, so he'll can't invite him to a meeting he's already in. I'm not sure what to do.
Don, do you want to call him and tell him as we see him that he's in the meeting?
Yeah, well, he can hear us, but apparently he can't say anything. When he talks, he doesn't. You guys don't hear him, but he can hear us.
Okay.
Trustee Reed is actually muted.
Did you hear that? It says that I see it on my screen that Trustee Reed is muted. And if Trustee Reed wants to send something, you know what, Trustee Reed, if you're hearing me, then send something by email if you need to, and send it to myself or to Scott or to Jared or to Trustee Pachikowski. But we see you. We see your microphone coming on and off, Trustee Reed. Or you can even give Don a call and Don can relay the information for you. But I do think that we need to move forward. So we're going to move forward with our treaty acknowledgement. Trustee Barry.
Oh, just hang on with me, Mr. Chairman. I just got kicked out. I'm getting back in again. Can you hear me?
I can.
We acknowledge the traditional land upon which Sunrise School Division resides as Treaty 1 territory. We honor our partnership with Canada's original peoples and respect the gifts of Indigenous history, culture, and language. We commit to moving forward in a partnership with our communities in a spirit of collaboration and reconciliation.
Thank you, Trustee Barry. 2.1 talks about the adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved that the board approve the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by.
Harris.
Trustee Harris, seconded by.
Trustee Nickel.
Trustee Nickel, thank you. Any comments to it, the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote electronically. See how this works, Stacy? So I see two trustees have not had a chance to vote yet or are able to vote. Trustee Duma and Trustee Reed. Oh, Trustee Dumas, now we're just waiting. Okay, so everyone's voted. My apologies, I should have let you know right at the beginning that Trustee Rowland is not able to make it, so there are 8 trustees that are here with us. Thank you. It seems like everybody has voted. Thank you. 3.0 talks about chair's comments. And a reminder that currently the way that we have about sending questions is to send them to scarlton@sunrisesd.ca, and you'll see that that's on your screen in front of you. Please send your name and address of the sender to be included in the email, and we'll try to get to your questions. I am going to allow the floor open, and if anybody wants to share a story about the start of the school year or how things are going, certainly go ahead and do that. Anybody want to share a story? Okay, hearing none, I'll certainly share a story. We did have a special meeting. At our special meeting, trustees had an opportunity to voice their opinions about masks. They did get a chance to go ahead and do that. We had a vote. After the vote, we've received a number of emails. We are going to tell you later, certainly, about our response to that and about how we're going to list that, certainly, so that it's on the record about receiving those emails. A few days later, the province came out and has mandated masks. And you know what, they've mandated a number of the other things, vaccines, those kind of things. And some of the rules are changing on us daily. So I can tell you that our senior admin staff is working with the province and meeting, you know, daily with the province, as the province is sending more information out to us about how things are going. And you're going to hear some more information that comes from Superintendent Timko, certainly about that later on. Does that mean that today's Tuesday, August 31st, and potentially things change by Thursday and Friday? Absolutely. But again, we'll send the information to you as we get it. So that's certainly, I wanted to go ahead and send out where things are with that. And again, a big thank you to our custodial staff that got our buildings in pretty good looking shape. I've been into a couple of them and seen a couple of them that are looking in pretty good shape. So thanks for our custodial staff and our maintenance staff for the work that they've done over the summer to get us underway. As again, many of our staff are in our buildings now preparing ourselves. Did I miss anything? Did anybody else want to share? Kathy, did you want to share anything? Share a story?
No, I would echo the thanks that you have for our custodial staff, for all of our managers, all of our administrators, people that have been in already, even though the school year hasn't started for students yet. A lot of our staff are in and are doing a ton of heavy lift, just getting ready for the school year. So just a shout out to everybody, because we're working hard and trying to adapt to all the changes that come our way, as you said, Paul, kind of daily sometimes. So big appreciation to everyone.
Okay. So if we don't have any other comments from any other trustees about sharing a story. Okay, I'll move on. 4.0 is our delegation. We do have a delegation tonight. Scott, can you give us an update as to where we are with our delegation?
Yeah, I've got Rob Lintwich on the phone here. Rob's indicating he can hear fine. Hopefully all of you trustees can hear him as well. I appreciate Rob's patience as we had some technological challenges today that didn't allow him to log on to Teams. But I'm going to let Rob take it away, and please, trustees, let us know if you cannot hear well.
Before we start, Scott, I just want to let Rob know. Thanks very much, Rob, for coming and presenting in front of us. Just a reminder that, Rob, you have 10 minutes in front of us. There was no information that you provided to us ahead of time, but thanks for coming and presenting. After you present, the trustees can ask clarifying questions for you, and we will, if there is documentation that you have tonight, we would love to have it. If there isn't documentation, we try to get back to you within 3 days, some feedback from your presentation. So Rob, thank you for coming. and the floor is yours. You have us for 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Perfect, thank you. I just want to check and make sure everyone can hear me well.
I can hear you loud enough, Rob, so I think that we're good to go.
Okay, my name is Rob Lentwich. I've been a professional firefighter for over 20 years. I am hazmat tech certified. I have training inside of hazmat suits. I am OSHA and NIOSH trained in the use of all types of masks in all types of environments. I've been in the use of masks against pathogens, chemical spills, agents of combustions, carcinogens, and I've been a frontline paramedic / firefighter during the opening stages of the pandemic. I'd like to just start with some quick mask facts. The opening of the mask holes in the average 3-layer surgical mask is 8,000 times of the pathogen in question, with the SARS-CoV-2. The size of SARS-CoV-2 is 0.01 microns large. The size of the average mask opening in a 3-layer surgical mask is 80. Even when attached to droplets, those maximum size of those droplets are 60 microns big, and they evaporate immediately. Basically, it comes down to you have a chain link fence over your house and you're trying to stop the rain from getting in. I am NIOSH certified, and instead of actually going through all the NIOSH steps of donning and doffing masks, which I'm going to assume the kids have never been trained on, prepared on, and probably not your staff, I'll take the kind of reduced and simplified Manitoba recommended mask donning procedures. The mask must be clean and dry. The mask must be checked before use for holes. You must wash your hands before touching the mask. Up in one hand, adjust straps and tie to ensure fit. And to be honest with you, all N95s, even N95s, must be fit tested. I cannot wear an N95 mask. It is not actually recommended for my use in the area of pathogens because I failed the fit test. If you imagine wearing a cloth mask in that environment, it is absolutely useless. You must wash your hands then again. Do not touch mask or face while wearing. That is just the donning procedure. To actually take off the mask, you must wash your hands, remove the mask, fold up the ends, place in a clean and breathable bag or container. Do not reuse the mask if it is moist or dirty. Wash the mask after use. And to properly wash a mask, it must be in a superheated, properly allocated medical washer. If you've ever seen them, they're at the HSC and St. Boniface facilities. That's the only way to actually properly sterilize a mask for use. If all of these procedures are followed to a T, the very best possible result of an outcome is a 10% filtration, the equivalent of opening up the door to your classroom. 10% filtration rate in an area of combustion or carcinogens or pathogens is absolutely useless. Even the N95 mask, which has a filtration rate of 95%, is not recommended for viral pathogens. Also, a primary vector of pathogens for infecting the body is the eyes. You must wear sealed goggles that actually prevent any pathogen from entering the eyes. The short end of the stick is the mask isn't going to save you. It isn't going to prevent you from getting infected. It's not going to prevent you from infecting others. We've never, ever masked an asymptomatic population in the history of our kind, ever. It's never been recommended. It doesn't work. Asymptomatic transmission has been studied on COVID-19. It is determined to be 0.03% chance of transmission. Doesn't happen. There is no reason to mask up asymptomatic children. This was submitted to me from a teacher from the division. She reported what she saw last year when there was a mask mandate in the schools. The masks spent a large amount of time on the ground. They were wet and full of mucus and saliva. They created breathing and speech issues. Teachers are not qualified to instruct others on the donning and doffing procedures of masks. You're asking these kids to wear these things. They have no idea how. They're kids. They're going to touch them. They're going to throw them on the ground. Whenever they are compromised, as soon as you touch that mask, you introduce new pathogens, new bacteria, new viruses onto the mask. I've already said how the mask, or the holes in the mask are actually bigger, far bigger than the virus. When you place pathogens and bacteria and fungus on that mask, you can suck it right in. Children also depend on facial expressions, lip reading, tone of voice to learn and communicate. I'm just wondering how this actually affects the teachers' ability to properly teach French, English, and pronunciation of language. Masks are actually very, very awful in the educational setting. A study of 25,930 students produced a 60% irritability, 53% headaches, 50% difficulty concentrating, 49% reported sadness, 44% did not want to go to school, 37% had fatigue and drowsiness, 25% developed anxieties. It was reported also in the same year that they had a 334% spike in self-harming. I know during the Winnipeg school year, there was massive increase in self-cutting behavior among children. The first 8 months, suicides tripled. We are harming our kids. With all of this, with the irritability, headaches, sadness, anxiety, fatigue, and drowsiness, how the heck are you supposed to learn anything? You are unfocused, unproductive, and I've seen it during the year, especially in my own children. This is not a conducive learning environment. The Manitoba Kids Helpline was overloaded. I talked to the person in charge of this. The kids were actually being placed on hold. School can be a sanctuary for children. They must be allowed to socialize freely and be free of anxiety. What we would like to see is no mask being worn in the classrooms unless the children actually want them or the parents want them wearing it. We want mask-free zones so the kids can be free to socialize and be children. We want no mask wearing while engaged in physical exercising. There is no need to, and it also restricts breathing and complicates any asthmatic or medical conditions that kids might have. We would like the school to also respect all the exemptions. The school is to adopt a zero tolerance policy towards any kind of bullying, the shaming of not wearing a mask. We've heard reports, a lot of stuff, you take off your mask, parents will actually instruct their kids, you see anyone not wearing a mask, to basically let them know they're going to kill grandma. This is highly unacceptable. And also, like, not in your school division, but I've heard also teachers belittling students for actually taking it off. The public health has also stated that no doctor's note is required for exemptions. And I've also talked to the ombudsman that said that possible collection of personal medical health information in absence of a provincial health mandate is a possible violation of FIA and FIPA. I just want to thank the board for allowing me to present. I know you're all reasonable, open-minded people, or else you wouldn't have had me here. I thank you for being responsible for your constituents, your students, and the children most of all. All in my time.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate your comments. I'm sure that you have that written down. Certainly, there was a number of things that you've asked of us. We'd appreciate you sending that to us in writing so that we have that. I did take a bunch of notes that were there, as all trustees did. I am going to open up the floor to trustees, and I'll recognize you. Is there any trustees that have any kind of questions that you have for Rob?
Trustee Pachkowski.
Go ahead, Trustee Pachkowski.
Sorry, I'm just going to turn on my camera so you can see me here, Rob. So I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to come to the board with your concerns. You know, a lot of people aren't willing to do that, so to put yourself in that situation and bring your concerns forward to us is appreciated. Also want to recognize the work that you've done on the front line in your position over the last year and a half, and how challenging that must have been. So appreciate that personally. I'm not going to speak on the rest of the board, but I do personally appreciate that. And if you have, obviously, I mean, it does sound like you have some experience with this, and obviously some research behind it as well. I mean, I know I would appreciate any documentation or any research you have in regards to that. You know, always appreciative to receive sort of that type of information, and helps us make informed decisions. So appreciate your time. Would like you to send anything that you have to me anyways. I don't know if the rest of the board wants it or not, but I would encourage you to send it to the entire board. And again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Any further questions?
Trustee Duma?
Go ahead, Trustee Duma. Go ahead.
Just don't want to get cut off by the picture. Sorry. Thank you, Rob, for your presentation. I wonder if you said some things that recommendations. I wonder if you can make sure that we get a copy of your recommendations, and also if you could just provide some more information on that study that you talked about, where it was I think you said 25,000 students were in a study regarding the impact of masks. Just if you could make sure you cite where that came from and what that is. That Canadian or is that American or? But appreciate the information and appreciate your time.
But I do believe this study was actually German. The suicide statistics were from the US.
Okay.
And the Manitoba Health Hotline was actually, well, from Manitoba.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Any other? Thank you, Diane. Trustee Duma. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Thanks, Rob, for your presentation. We'll certainly, you can send that to us, the stuff that you have in writing, and that would be much appreciated. We're going to move on to 5.0 minutes. 5.1, the minutes of June 15th. Be it resolved that the board adopt the June 15th board meeting minutes. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by
Paczkowski moves.
Trustee Paczkowski, seconded by
Harris.
Trustee Harris. Any comments to the minutes that were, again, we've talked about bringing them ahead of time? Anything we should know?
Trustee Inslee, when can we actually have it on the minutes when it mentions information / report presented to board? Can we actually have it recorded, whether it was verbal report or email or printed report on the minutes? I believe we've asked for this before, but it doesn't give any indication of how the information or report was presented to the board. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm not sure what you're talking about, but if you're asking about as we move forward about having our minutes with regard to how that it was presented, written or verbal, certainly we can get that on. Thanks, thanks, Karen.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Paul.
Okay, hearing no further, we'll call the question. We'll vote electronically. So there was a pass, 7 in favor and 1 was opposed. Thank you. 5.2, be it resolved that the board adopt the July 13th board meeting minutes. I need a mover and a seconder.
I'll move it. Trustee Nicol.
I'm sorry. Well, it's my fault. We should go to the, did I say July 13th? We need to do the, oh yeah, I'm right, sorry. July 13th, sorry, Don. You moved it, thank you. July 13th, I need a seconder.
Trustee Paczkowski.
Thank you, Trustee Paczkowski. Comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. So there were 6 in favor and there were 2 opposed. It passes. Thank you. 5.3 is the minutes of August the 19th. Be it resolved that the board adopt the August 19th board meeting minutes. Need a mover and a seconder.
Trustee Nicol will move.
Trustee Nicol, thank you. Moved. Seconded by
Harris.
Trustee Harris, thank you. Comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. And these were passed, 6 in favor, 2 were opposed. Thank you. Summarize the superintendent's report. Trustee Timko, floor is yours.
Thanks. I'm going to go through a couple of things. First of all, just kind of a quick review of the letter that we sent out for the start of the school year. So just making sure that everybody is aware. I'm going to try to balance a couple of screens here. So if I happen to mess up some of this, I apologize, but I'll give it a whirl. Wanted to take parents through some of the changes. So last year we left the school year and there are some changes. There is a link to a document called Manitoba Education released the K-12 guidelines. So it is Restoring Safe Schools Planning Guide for the 21-22 school year. There have already been some changes. So as Paul alluded to at the beginning, things change quickly. And that has been our life for the last 18 plus months, is that when things change, we do our very best, our level best, to make sure that everybody is aware of what those changes are. And we try to share those in the most open and comprehensive way that we can. So I did want to just kind of quickly go through some of the things that are coming up next week. So next week, Wednesday, the 8th, is in-class learning, and we are resuming in-class learning for all students. So last year we had some blended learning situations. All students will be resuming learning in class on the 8th. There are no staggered entries or triad conferencing. Classes will begin for everyone on the 8th. Again, all kindergarten to grade 12 students are back for the whole time. There are still cohorts in the kindergarten through grade 6 to grade 6th grade level, and we've had some questions about how come kindergarten to grade 6 and not grade 7 to grade 12. And the cohorting is tied entirely to contact tracing. And some of the contact tracing that public health undergoes or undertakes has to do with whether or not folks are vaccinated or not vaccinated, whether they're wearing masks, not wearing masks. And they're coming out with some of the new contact tracing guidelines regarding that very shortly. But the cohorting of keeping smaller groups of students together has to do entirely with contact tracing. So we just wanted to make sure that folks knew that was the reason why we were doing that at kindergarten to grade 6, as per the guidelines. The secondary reason of this is, I've said to all of the people in our system, I'd love to be coming out the gate and saying to everybody, good news, it is just normal, whatever that kind of looks like. I'd love there not to be restrictions or criteria or guidelines. And we need to be hopeful and aiming for that day when we don't have guidelines and we don't have restrictions. And one of the ways in which we can do that and work on training our students is by working with our older children or our younger adults and having them model for others what that looks like. So we want to try and start doing that with our grade 7 and 8 students so that they are modeling. How do I stay 2 meters away from people? How do we safely socialize? Because that's going to be a part of their life from here going forward. And if we can get that solidly in our grade 7 to 12 students, then we've got a better chance when that becomes available for our kindergarten to grade 6 students as well. All students have to wear masks on the bus. So again, the places where they have to wear masks is on the bus when they're moving from one place to another and when they are within 2 meters of any other person. We sent a letter out, and I'll get to the mask letter in a bit, but I want to keep going through some of the other things. It is still an expectation that parents are screening their children, and staff as well are staying home when they're sick. One of the biggest pieces of information that we gained from last year was just the number of people who found that they had less of the common cold and less of any sickness because of their social distancing and because of their following the fundamental of staying home when sick. So that was a huge piece that was really helpful, and we'd like to make sure that folks are still doing the same thing. As we crack open some of the other return to normal, if I can say normal, extracurricular activities are starting back up. Field trips are going to be permitted. The restriction to field trips is that we have no overnight trips. Some of the parents who say, well, what does that mean for sports provincials? The province is still working on what that might mean because, as you know, provincials happen all over the province and it's really hard to get across the province without having an overnight trip. So they're working on that through the Manitoba High School Athletics Association. Wind instruments and indoor singing is now permitted or allowed. We need to make sure we have adequate ventilation and adequate physical distancing, but it's really exciting to have our wind instruments and our choirs and choral classes back. School and classroom libraries, as well as all of our other shared equipment, are now able to be used, in between different classes or different groups of kids. We're really focusing this year on good hand hygiene. So that whole notion of wash your hands before you touch anything, and then wash your hands after you've touched anything, and keep them away from your face and eyes. So in the library, yes, sanitizing before we go in the library, and then sanitizing when we've touched anything. Same thing with shared toys or manipulatives and learning equipment and those kinds of things. Our canteens and school kitchens will be open, but we do need to say that at this point, it is only our hired staff in the canteens that are doing food handling and doing serving of food. Love to be able to be doing hot dog days and cookie sales and popcorn sales and all of those things that we have done in the past, but right now it is that we can open our canteens or our food services in our school, home ec classes as well, but with safe food handling in place and some guidelines on the kinds of serving utensils and condiments and things that we can use. So at this point, it is that we have canteens open and staff serving only. I did want to mention that our sports and athletic activities are returning following the sports guidelines, and regardless of the level that we have, we're following the Manitoba High School Athletics Association guidelines. All of our schools last year had an upgrade to their doors thanks to the Board of Trustees. We now have an electronic or a computerized entry system, so the doors will stay locked so that everybody is safe inside the school, and there is a buzzer system to let someone in. So if you do need to come into the school for any reason, you will buzz and we will go through these pre-screening and sign in and all of those things. Any of our parents or any of our visitors also need to be masked coming into the school. That is a provincial public health order right now that masks are worn by all staff, all students, and all visitors in schools or any indoor places. The province has also indicated that there are not any grade 12 provincial exams coming up this year. So the typical grade 12 math exams at all three levels, pre-cal, applied, and essential, are not happening this year. The Français exams not happening in grade 12 this year, and the English exams not happening in grade 12 this year. They are shifting that back to a grade 10, but that won't happen for this year, upcoming year. But just to let parents know that the grade 12s are not writing their typical provincial exams this year. We also have community use of schools that will be permitted. We have some extra criteria for that, so we've got to have some extra cleaning in between. So we really want to make sure that all of our folks have got their applications in a good 2 weeks ahead of time. There will be a requirement to fill out a map in terms of the areas that you'll be using, and we do need to make sure that the person on site is fully ready to do the contact tracing and get everybody signed in. I do not know what the impact of vaccinations or frequent testing is for visitors and volunteers, but I can say that the public health order recently had indicated that all public sector employees are going to need to either be vaccinated or test frequently for COVID-19. We're unclear as to what that all is going to look like. There is a mandate to have that done by the end of October, and I'm hopeful that there will be some further guidelines in terms of what does that mean for any other guests in our buildings. But right now we're working on making sure that all of our staff are compliant with one of those two options. I am going to shift into the mask conversation, and I will tell you that it's not an easy conversation, and it's not something that society is in agreement with, and it is one of those things where we've heard lots about. And I want to say that there probably is always going to be someone who is not in agreement with what it is that we should or shouldn't be doing. So I do appreciate all of the emails and all of the perspectives and all of the opinions that have been coming in. And I thank all of the folks who have had a response from me and who have thanked me for my time as well. There's been a lot, and we've tried really hard to make sure that we keep on top of those. I'm going to take a breath here and try to get my other hand out. Got way too many screens open here. However, give it a whirl. So as Paul mentioned, on August 19th, the board passed a motion about wearing masks for the students and staff and visitors in Sunrise. And then on August 24th, Manitoba public health officials announced a mandatory mask use for all indoor spaces. That is for all kindergarten to grade 12 students. And school divisions don't have the option of not following public health orders. So all students, staff, and visitors have to wear masks inside school or divisional facility when they are on the move from one place to another, if they are within the 2 meter space of another person and the whole time that they're on a school bus. So masks can't be removed while riding the school bus. They can be removed at school when they are physically distanced in common areas, if they are outside the school or division facility. There is some rumblings or some rumors about whether or not kids can take off masks when they're seated or what the distance needs to be. So I do need to let folks know that we're really trying hard with Manitoba Education and Public Health to get some clarity on that. Some of you have asked the question about, well, can you confirm that when my kid is seated at their desk that they can indeed take their mask off? That was the indication, and I want to be completely transparent and honest and say, if that changes, we will let folks know the minute it does, but there is a bit of a whiff that that might be coming. Sports, in terms of doing athletics or working out, when we're doing those kinds of things, we're following the mask guidelines for particular sports, but in phys ed class, very typically they would not have to be wearing a mask when they are competing or playing games in the gym. There is also a mask exemption form, and there has been a lot of controversy around our mask exemption form. It is a mask exemption form that is used across the province. So this is an exemption form that has been crafted, has been run by legal teams, has been challenged in court, and indeed has held up. So I don't mean to say that in a way that we're not being sensitive to people's needs, but we do need to be fair and consistent when we're looking at mask exemptions. So I do want to take a quick minute to go through the exemption list, and then I will wrap her up. Again, following public health advice, we need to make sure that we have folks wearing their masks. It does indicate that there are very few medical conditions that warrant an exception to the directive mandating non-medical masks be worn. While a medical note from a healthcare provider is not required by public health or Manitoba Education to accommodate the child's limitations with respect to their child wearing a mask in school, the school division or school can request a note provided by a parent, guardian from a healthcare provider. And I think this speaks a little bit to what we heard in Rob's presentation. Someone's personal health information is indeed that, it's their personal health information, which is what may warrant the need for a medical note. So if a parent either is unwilling or unable to share the medical information, then a note from a medical provider would be required, just to say quite simply that I have, met with this person and they are unable or should be exempt from wearing a medical mask or a non-medical mask or mask of any kind. Appropriate exceptions or the exemptions list. If someone is under the age of 5 years old, either chronologically or developmentally, then they would be exempt from wearing a mask. If they have severe sensory processing disorders, a doctor may say that that is something that we need to do. Has facial deformities that are incompatible with masking. Has post-traumatic stress disorder triggered by a face covering. Has extreme agoraphobia, asphyxia phobia, which is long-standing and predates COVID-19. Has a medical condition unrelated to COVID-19, including breathing or cognitive difficulties or a disability which prevent them from safely wearing a mask. Someone who has a cognitive impairment or an intellectual deficiency or is on the autism spectrum, for whom wearing a mask would cause severe distress or disorganization, and is unable to apply or remove the covering without help. We've had questions about, is there a religious exemption for mask wearing? And there is not. And again, I think the other piece is just around whether or not a medical note is required. I think that would constitute the things that I wanted to kind of highlight and share. I know it's fairly lengthy, and I promise anybody who's still watching, this is not usually the length of the report that I would give, but there's some pretty big pieces in there in terms of how the school year starts and what we want to make sure that everybody knows when we start the school year. I think the only other piece that I would like to draw the attention to both the Board of Trustees and to the public is that each of our schools has a website, and they have newsletters on their website. For our Board of Trustees, you will note on your ESB software there is a newsletter section on there, and we will be populating that with all the school newsletters so that you can also see what's happening in all the schools in one place instead of having to sign up for all of them at all of the school sites. Unless there are questions, I believe that's probably more than enough of me talking.
Trustee Inslee, I just want clarification, because I know, Kathy, you just said obviously it was very lengthy and not normally that detailed or long, but I know that I've had parents excited about the fact that kids can resume sports. And as a fitness professional myself, I'm mandated by the Manitoba Fitness Council, so I do keep up to speed on regulations, and the current public health orders does stipulate that if you're participating in athletic activities, and one of the reporters the other day did ask the announcements about masks being removed when you're participating in a physical activity or working out, and that it is actually allowed to be removed when performing a physical activity, athletic event and sports. So I do recall you just mentioning something about that, but obviously, like I say, the list was long. So I just wanted to get clarification that this is something that's going to be considered and I guess followed through with regard to the kids' sporting activities, unless you have other knowledge or information that's been provided to you. But I guess that's my clarification question. Have you been given any other information to support that the kids can't remove their mask during their phys ed classes? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense, so I'll give it a whirl, Karen. During phys ed classes in school, for the most part, yeah, kids are removing their masks. So we've talked with phys ed teachers and said, if you're doing an activity where you're kind of concerned or think that they're in close proximity, we think you probably need to change the activity. The place where we're going to have to look at the mask use is that the Manitoba High School Athletic Association governs inter-school competitions. So if school A is going into another division and competing against another school, some of those competitive sports teams have guidelines for how the teams can safely compete with a different group of students. And so that's the only other set of guidelines that we use to govern how athletics are done. And that's inter-school.
Okay, thank you. But I was kind of just looking for clarification and additional information just for regular phys ed classes and activities in schools with regard to phys ed classes, not necessarily the competition side of it. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Trustee Inslee. Anyone else have questions for Kathy?
Diane, Trustee Duma, just a question about anything that was done this summer in regards to ventilation in the schools, because we had heard that there was money being given to divisions. I just wonder if there have been any changes regarding ventilation in the schools, if you could report on any of that.
We do have a report, and so right now Edward Schreier School has a whole second phase of their HVAC that is underway. Oh, there's a second school, Scott.
Dugald had some roof units replaced, and SCI is looking at replacing an outside wall, but that's more insulation. You know, most of our HVAC systems have been upgraded. We're certainly keeping a closer eye on filtration and filters, but it's been our maintenance department has indicated that most of our HVAC systems and filtration systems are in very good shape.
Thanks, Scott.
So are we? Yeah, thank you. Are we encouraging schools to open windows?
When it makes sense, yeah. You know, we had some issues in June with heat. And directing fans to sort of move air out of classrooms, opening windows in those circumstances. It's more about, I guess, you know, how and where we direct air. You know, you don't necessarily want to recirculate it in a classroom, so out a door or out a window is the best case scenario, but as much as possible, for sure, fresh air in 2 rooms.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Duma. Thanks, Scott. Anyone else? Kath, I'm going to give you a couple of questions. These are questions that have come from some parents, and some of them are very similar questions that go on, and I think that there are probably some things that you can go ahead and answer. One of the questions from a parent said is that, do parents have to be double vaccinated to come into the school? Where do we stand on that?
Yes, I think I answered that one. We don't have any guidance as to whether or not parents or volunteers or community use of school folks have to be double vaccinated or approved test results. So we're still waiting on that one.
Okay, thanks, Kath. One of the concerns from a parent that came with a question is that, they're hearing that there's vaccine clinics that are coming into the schools. Do you know what, do we have scheduled vaccine clinics in our schools?
So at this point in time, we don't have any scheduled vaccine clinics. It is on my radar to bring to the board and have our next topic of conversation be exactly that. I think that the concern is around the notion of passive consent versus informed consent. And I can say that for any of the vaccine clinics that we've ever had, we have never gone with in our passive consent. In a school, in our school division, it has always been only informed parent consent if we've hosted a vaccine clinic, but that would be a topic I think that the board and our public would be really interested in chatting about next, but we don't have any scheduled at this time.
Kathy, can I just word that a different way? Informed consent, can you go ahead and, so informed consent meaning is that parents would have to say that it's okay as opposed to passive consent the other way? Do you want to just stipulate that so that parents understand?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so informed consent would be if I as a parent choose to have a vaccine of any kind administered to my child, there is a piece of paper and a signed form that would have to be complete giving consent as a parent for my child to receive vaccine A, B, and C at a pop-up clinic at the school. So we've only ever had public health officials in the school administering vaccines when a parent has signed a piece of paper. If I am a teenager who goes into a teen health clinic or to my doctor's office and I go to a health facility, the health authorities in our province have a method by which they could meet with an underage student and make an assessment about whether or not that child under 18 was able to give consent for themselves. Don't entertain that at all as a school division. We don't even open that conversation. We are not that vessel in any way, shape, or form. That is something that happens through the health authority. If we were to have vaccine clinics in our schools, it would strictly be on an informed, signed parent form so that it eases a parent taking a child into the doctor's office to get the vaccine, but it would not be available for students to make that choice themselves at all.
Thanks, Kat. Thanks for crystal clear. Thank you for doing that. One of the questions that's come up, and you talked a little bit about cohorts, and we had cohorts. Can you just review that again? And you know what, we had cohorts for K to 6, but not potentially now for grades 7 to 12. Can you just review that for us again, please?
Yep, so cohorting is something that Manitoba Education and Public Health put in place so that they could contact trace and limit the number of contacts that would be happening between numbers of kids. So with vaccination rates and high vaccination uptake, the contact tracing diminishes on its own. So if we have a high vaccination uptake in our grade 7 to 12 students, then there wouldn't have to be a larger amount of contact tracing, or we wouldn't happen to be sending students home to isolate because they are vaccinated. The secondary reason for me, and I'm just going to be absolutely honest, this pandemic is not something, or diseases or viruses are not something that we're going to be able to outrun. So it is something that we do need to teach our students is, how do we maintain safe distance? How do we wash our hands appropriately? How do we keep ourselves safe in all those situations? without having to be cohorted into this particular place. I didn't mention when I went through the letter is that our 7s and 8s also have optional courses like cooking and sewing and woods and metals and electronics and power mech and all those things, band and art, and that they intermingle to do because of what their choices are. And a lot of those things couldn't happen last year because they were in cohorts. So some of the other reason is that as we open up those other options, being able to not be in a cohort is important for kids to get those exposures options.
Thanks, Kathy. One last one. There was a comment, a question that came to me about, will children learn proper pronunciation if they cannot see the teachers' faces? Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what's going on in our classrooms?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably a number of things. So we do have some of our teachers use masks that have a clear, I don't want to say lining, a clear patch to them where we can see someone's mouth moving and we can watch how letters are formed and those kinds of things. We do also do some of the I'm 2 meters away, so we can be 2 meters away and have our masks off and be doing that articulation and pronunciation in that way. Our teachers have also been really, really ingenious in a number of ways that I can't even begin to name for you. They've been incredible. There's a ton of video work that's happened in terms of reading stories in video form. So a teacher video recording themselves reading the story and being able to stop and replay and show and point out. Kids have been videoing their own reading as an assessment, and we've actually found that that's it's increased confidence in reading because it's not reading in front of peers or in front of the class and having that fear or anxiety about reading. So we've used a lot of video stuff, and I, again, have no doubt that there's probably a whole bunch more that are happening that I don't know about.
Okay, there's a couple of other common questions that Trustee Pachikowski has for you, Catherine. And these are just a number of questions. And again, we've encouraged people to ask questions to us. And you know what, they've come from before the meeting. So I'm just going to go ahead, and it just seems like we're on a roll. So let's go ahead and try to get the information out. And it's great, Kathy, that people are hearing this from you so that they can move forward. Trustee Pachikowski, do you want to move forward with your question?
Yeah. So one of the questions that came up from quite a few parents that contacted me as well, and I do sort of, is that 12 and older have had access. They're eligible for the vaccine. So I guess the question that came up quite a bit was, why are we? What's the province's reasoning behind, or what was the reasoning behind masking grades 7 to 12, and what? Just wondering about that. I had that question come up, but I don't know if you can provide any insight into that.
Yeah, and I honestly, I don't know the reasoning behind the 7 to 12 masking. My guess, I could ask, but I'll offer my supposition around it, or my guess around it would be that we're also cracking open more things like athletics, like options, like not cohorting. And so there's a balance between when we open things up, that we want to also be protective and wear those masks because we're cracking open some more freedoms. So it is one of those pieces where, as we open more freedoms and more crossing of cohorts and more interaction with kids, then wearing the mask within the 2 meter distance is also pretty important. There is also the Delta variant that's out there, and as we've read in articles and all over the place, is craftier than ever. So we do want to make sure that students who aren't within that 2 meter distance have a mask on as that extra layer of protection. Has been stuff that I have heard at all our meetings.
Thank you. The other one I had, and actually, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but I've had quite a bit of obviously emails, just as the entire board has, as you have, since our meeting on the 19th as well. And I think it's probably a good idea to maybe clarify the difference between public health recommendations and public health orders. And I'm not sure if you wanted to touch on that, or if I mean, I can as well. Do you want to, or?
I'll give it a shot, and if I miss some pieces, then anybody's more than welcome to jump in with that. So public health recommendations, and I'll start by saying I am a trained educator, If you want, you know, my expertise on how to teach reading or how to teach number sense and numeracy fluidity and all of those things, I have a ton of training and I am an expert in that area. I am not a doctor, nor an epidemiologist or a virologist or anybody who has any idea how to look at or interpret all the data that comes from Manitoba around this pandemic and transmission. So public health is the agency that Manitobans and public schools for sure go to, because they have all of that relevant data around transmission and variants and tracking and all of those things. So when public health has a recommendation, school boards then can make a decision around, are we following that recommendation or are we not following that recommendation? If it's a public health order, so lots of what we've heard in the pandemic has been, this is now a public health order. How many people can be on, you know, in your house? Whether you have to wear a mask when you're out and about. Have restaurants been open? Have they been closed? Those public health orders are legislated, they are law, and we have to follow those. So we don't have a choice with that. And again, as much as I appreciate all of the feedback and perspectives and opinions, I do need to rely on the public health department because they have those experts who can inform our decisions around what makes sense from a public health standpoint. So they are our medical experts in the area of public education. I don't know if that answers it, Jared.
No, it does. It's really important for people to understand the difference between public health recommendations and then public health orders. So thank you for that.
If I can follow up again, I'd love nothing more than to come out the gate and say, hey, good news, there are no restrictions or criteria for anything. I can't. We're not at that place and it sucks.
All right, thanks very much, Kathy, for answering those questions, and the longest report ever on record. But no, that was great and informative. Kidding aside, thanks for going ahead and doing that. Your leadership here is appreciated, and we may come back to you later on. We're going to move on to our Secretary Treasurer's report, Mr. Carlton.
Thanks, Paul. I'll get through my report, I think, pretty quick. I'll highlight a few items that you know, I want to give some pat on the backs and give you an idea of what we go through over the summer. You know, most of my operating departments, maintenance, IT, transportation, are all 12-month employees who work through the summer, and we try and get some stuff done that is much easier to accomplish when we don't have students in schools or on buses, of course. So my report is there, but I do want to highlight a couple of things. First of all, a big pat on the back to our maintenance department and to some of our contractors. As Kathy alluded to, Edward Schreier is going through a pretty significant HVAC replacement project. This is phase 2 of the HVAC replacement. I was there today. It's going to be touch and go. It's still a bit messy, but they got a lot of work done over the course of the summer with no students there, and it looks like we're going to be, if not totally complete, 99% complete by start of school next week. So good job to the contractors. Derek and his maintenance department stay very busy, even when a project like that gets contracted out. We sort of move on to the next things. As the board is aware, I believe we've been approved for funding for 3 different science labs and a pretty significant project at Springfield Collegiate, replacing the external wall. Those will happen next summer. But the work starts now. Derek starts working now with architects and planners, and we get everything ready to go. Then it goes to tender in the fall, hopefully get awarded over winter, and then by springtime we're in a position to start ordering products. So the project will be a go next summer again when students are out of school. So you know, that's sort of the cycle, the life cycle of how the projects go. So Derek's had a number of projects he's got in planning for next year. And then of course, you know, we don't have students. We're doing some pretty significant projects around refinishing floors and refinishing gym floors and doing a lot of painting. I was out in Whitemouth the other day doing some work on some of the school supply stuff, and they had a whole bunch of painting going on around door frames and things like that are obviously just much easier when students aren't around. So busy the whole time. IT again, you know, they generally refresh all our devices across the system and replace computers and laptops and iPads and things like that every 5 years. So summertime is the time to do that. also update software on any existing systems. So, you know, again, they've got 1/6 of the year, the 2 months in summer, without students or teachers around when they jump on that and get an opportunity to do that. So incredibly summertime. Transportation I want to talk about for a second. Traditionally in transportation, I think this is important for the board to know, we've gone through this a little bit, but also for the public listening. You know, we do not get funded for students who live within what I would call a walk zone, 1.6 kilometers of the school. So we don't offer transportation, generally speaking, to those students. In the past, if we have room on a bus and we don't have to create a stop for a student, we will still offer transportation to eligible students. We haven't done that. Well, we didn't last year. We're looking at not doing that again for the start of this year. And the simple reason for that is we're trying to obviously work around parameters with COVID. Students wearing masks, trying to keep 2 meters distance from each other. You know, last year we were sort of saved by the, in terms of distancing, by the fact that the high school students were only going every second day, and we managed to work around transportation because we had only half the high school students on the bus. This year we've got everybody back full time. You know, we're trying not to jam up our transportation. We will still generally take a look at maybe ineligibles once things settle down a little bit later in September, early October. But similar to last year, we are telling parents right now, we simply won't be transporting non-eligible students to start the year. That's always a bit of an issue, but you know, that's the way we have to be at the start with regard to COVID and some of those parameters.
Thanks, Scott. Oh,
just one last thing, Paul, and then this will sort of meld into the next item, which is 7.2 finance. I just want to touch on the fact they're working hard on audit prep. Audit will start, I believe, as soon as next week. It looks like we are tracking to have a bit of a deficit this year, which makes sense given that the provinces had asked us to redirect some of our savings last year from COVID into this year. But I'll have more details on that coming soon.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott? Okay, hearing none. 7.2 year of end of year financial update. Oh,
Trustee Peczkowski had one question.
Go ahead, Trustee Peczkowski.
Yeah, so just in, again, spirit of transparency with the public. So with regards to our, our projected deficit this year, Mr. Carlton, could you just elaborate on the accumulated surplus and the allowable amount that a school division does have in their accumulated surplus? Just for further explanation, to be transparent with the public, please.
Yeah, so at a high level, the province set some parameters around the amount of accumulated surplus that we're allowed to carry. So in other words, every year if we receive funding from the province and municipal taxes, obviously the expectation is that we are to spend that money on education for students and not carry it forward. So the maximum amount we are allowed to carry as a surplus from year to year is 4% of our budget. Sunrise over the last few years has been running between a $65 and $70 million budget. So, you know, roughly $2.5 to $2.8 million is our cap in terms of surplus. Last year, the province waived that requirement when they did shut down schools in the springtime. There was some associated cost savings with layoffs and things like that. So they waived that requirement. We were over that 4% cap, but the province also indicated their expectation is we would take some of that surplus from last year and use it towards increased expenditures related to COVID this year. So that was the expectation, and that's what we did for this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carlton. So would it be fair to say that without a deficit, we would be over that 4% this year?
Correct. If we had not run a deficit and not redirected those savings to expenditures on COVID, we would be over the 4% cap. And, you know, certainly that's not something we want to do going forward. The province would be looking for us to come up with a plan on how we intend to use those resources to benefit education in our division.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Peczkowski. And thanks, Mr. Carlton. Anyone else? And Scott, did you have anything? Did I miss out on end of year finance update? Did you get to that?
I just kind of tied that into the end, Paul. You know, that's where
Perfect.
I mentioned that we will have a bit of a deficit, but we'll know more once the audit prep is ready to go in the next week or two.
Okay, thanks. So let's go on to 8.1 COVID costs. Scott, you've got some information for us.
Yeah, so over the summer, you know, things obviously died down a little bit. We did spend a bit of money, generally speaking, on payroll that sort of lapsed over from the end of last school year, but again, pretty minimal. I've attached that here. I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000. I've also attached some detail on our expenditures last year. You know, you can take a look at that and let me know if you have any questions. It was about where we were tracking. We did have some issues with trying to separate out some sick costs, teacher substitutes, what was COVID related and not COVID related. So I really ended up sort of bundling it all into COVID related sickness, which ended up showing that we overspent on our funding. But I think, you know, if we were able to split that out, I think that would sort of wash out. So, you know, we ended up spending our funding and redirected our savings from last year. So we're in pretty good stead there. I did want to point out, as we roll into this year, and it's not really clear yet how it's going to roll, but we are anticipating some additional funding this year for recovery learning. About the only thing that's been clear at this point is that they do have a $40 million fund that should be allocated to each division on a per pupil basis. So if you take historically, our percentage of that would be about roughly 2%, about $1 million that we could anticipate in terms of COVID funding this year. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that and bring that back to the board in terms of some of our needs to make sure that our students are able to sort of catch up on some of the learning that may have been a challenge over the course of the last 18 months to 2 years.
Thanks, Scott. Are there any questions from board members with regard to COVID costs? Hearing none, we'll move forward. 8.2 is a decision-making matrix or a review. We're continually working on that. It's not something that we're gonna talk about tonight, but it is something that the board has been working on. So the public, just letting you know about that. 8.3 is about in-person virtual meetings for the 2021 school year. Kathy, I'm going to give you a bit of information. Why don't you put together some information for it, and then we're going to just have a little bit of a roundtable discussion, certainly on it. But I'll give you the floor, Kath, to put you shared some information.
Yeah, so I guess the piece that we've been kind of trying to get some clarity on is that we've been told that all K-12 staff, you know, have to either have a vaccination, be fully vaccinated by October 31st, or go for frequent testing. We also know that in indoor public places, everyone has to be masked. So we're just trying to get some clarity in terms of what does that mean for trustees, for public attending a meeting, and whether social distancing has anything to do with that, whether we're 2 meters away, whether masks can be removed or not removed. Just trying to get some clarity, I think, on the public health orders and how that would impact the public or a public meeting of the Board of Trustees. Does that help, Paul?
Yeah, it does. Thanks, thanks, Kath. So I did want to get an opportunity for trustees to weigh in on it. Of course, we would love to be able to be meeting in person, but right now we said that we would review it, and we're taking a look at it now and just trying to decide what as a group we wanted to go ahead and do. So I'm going to go round table and ask trustees what their thoughts are about meeting back in person. And again, we still are waiting for some information from the Manitoba School Boards, is what Kathy has laid out here, and what does that mean about trustees, and with our staff as well. So certainly just looking for some thoughts from roundtable discussion. I'm going to go to Trustee Nicol. Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I think that we should be continue with the Teams meeting until we get some clarification, and probably maybe another month or two to see what's happening with the Delta variation, and see whether we're going to get into the fourth wave or not. I'd rather err on the side of caution, so I'm in favor of doing the Teams meeting. It worked well for the last 18 months, so I'm not quite sure why it won't continue to work well.
Thanks, Trustee Nicol. Trustee Barry?
No, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm okay to proceed with Teams also, and I echo what Trustee Nicol said. We got the fourth variant coming at us, so the common sense is just to go ahead and just meet via Teams.
Trustee Harris, thank you.
I concur with the two previous trustees. Certainly, it's best to meet in person, but I think at least for the first month, we should continue on Teams and review certainly on a monthly basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Inslee?
I concur with remaining on Teams for now, just because there's too many variables to consider. So we need to take it month by month, definitely.
Thank you. Trustee Duma?
I have no concerns either way, meeting or on Teams. I think it's always ideal to be in person, but I also think we have some outstanding questions, but either way makes no difference to me.
Trustee Peczykowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be first so far anyways, the odd man out here. I do think it's obviously ideal to meet in person. I'm okay on Teams, obviously, and we'll continue to do that if that's the will of the board. And I do, obviously there's, we're in a different time right now and heading towards possibly a fourth wave. What that looks like, we don't know. But I do think, again, I go back and I was the one that brought this up in the springtime, and we did have a short-lived period where we were meeting in person again. And I think, to me, it's about leadership again. And we have our students and our teachers returning to classes. We have our staff returning to our buildings. And, we're being told there are safe ways that can happen, and ways that we can reduce, reduce spread and minimize spread and that sort of thing. And I think we need to be leaders in our communities and leaders in our division. And we should be meeting in person if it's safe to do so. And I mean, if it's safe for our staff to be in buildings and it's safe for our students to be in buildings, then I don't think we should be hiding behind a computer screen. So I do think we should be meeting in person when possible. And I think meeting in person allows us to be more inclusive with public at our meetings. Maybe not physically, but it allows us to run our meetings a little differently, where we can take questions, more appropriately and those sorts of things. And I think that public engagement is important. So I'm definitely not in favor of continuing on Teams, but I will do whatever the board decides. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Trustee Peczykowski. And Dawn, Russ, can you hear me, and can we get you, Russ?
I think Trustee Reed is still having issues with his microphone, but he did put something in the comments. He said he can still hear everything. I can also vote and see everyone, but I think he said meet on Teams is typing something now.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion. Be it resolved that the board review motion 2021-04-06. 0130 and the receipt of the renewal of the emergency orders of the province. The Sunrise School Division Board of Trustees will meet via Teams until further notice, reviewed monthly at the end of the month. So instead of saying reviewed in December 2020, that we'll review it every month to decide as to where we're going. So Trustee Mango is going to make that motion. I need a seconder to the motion.
I'll second that, Trustee Barry.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on the motion?
Trustee Peczykowski, just that Trustee Reed said he wants to meet in person, that's all.
Trustee Reed said that he wanted to meet in person. Okay, he'll have a chance to go ahead and vote. Thank you. Trustee Nickel?
Yeah, is there any way that motion can be put in writing or somehow so that when we vote on it, that I can see it, not just hearing it?
So it's in your package, the motion. The motion is in your package. It's under possible motions. And the only thing that's changed is instead of reviewed in December 2021, it's reviewed monthly. Do you see it, Don?
Not yet, just a minute. Okay, I thought you were just making it up as you went along, so I can see it's here. Okay.
No, it's in the package, Don, and it's just,
okay.
I've just changed it instead of reviewed in December. I'm saying reviewed monthly.
Yeah. Okay.
I do think that. So again, I'll talk to the motion very quickly. I do think that for the most part, we do want to get back together, and I agree. I'd rather get back together as about doing it. There are a number of things that are outstanding from the province about trustees being vaccinated, about trustees, about masking for us. So there's a number of things that are there. So I'd like to get that clarified before we meet and then kind of go from there. So that's the motion that's on the floor. Anybody else want to comment to it?
Trustee Duma, so the interpretation of this motion is that trustees will be meeting via Teams until further notice and reviewed monthly. Because something could happen before, right? Before the next review, we could find out that we are going to meet or whatever. So,
well,
it includes two pieces, just to clarify.
Yes, but we would decide as a group, Diane, absolutely about us meeting together. It's a group that will make that decision.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying that. Anyone else?
Trustee Pachkowski.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, I've spoken already regarding the topic, but I forgot to add, and I would like to add that whatever, as trustees, whatever, when that time comes, whatever our staff and our employees are required to do regarding public health orders, I would also be in the position to support that our trustees have to follow those same guidelines.
Okay, thanks for that, Trustee Pachkowski. And again, anyone else want to comment? So Stacy, do we have to vote by hand on this?
Yes, please. It'll be manual. So it's not on the system yet. Thank you.
All right. So Don, how do you vote?
Yes.
Art? Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Harris?
Yes.
Trustee Inslee?
Yes.
Trustee Duma?
Yes.
Trustee Pachkowski?
No.
Trustee Reed?
Trustee Reed put no in the Trustee Reed put no in the chat.
Okay, and Trustee Mannion is a yes, so it passes 6-2. Thank you for doing that. Okay, let's keep going. 6.4 is Bill 64 Ad Hoc Committee. So there's a group of us that we're working on some things. So can we kind of give some information back to the board as to where we are? So I know that Trustee Nickel, you've been working on a meeting with the municipalities. Can you give us some feedback?
Yes, so we're meeting with the municipalities on our regular meeting that we have with them on the 13th of September. We've got an hour to present. Right now, it's unless there's a change, it's from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And we have Dr. Weens will be doing the presentation. And they're doing theirs by Zoom, so it won't be in person. He'll be presenting by Zoom and everybody else will be participating by Zoom.
Perfect. Thanks for organizing that. Trustee Pachkowski, we were talking about the town hall, and I know you're working on with Trustee Rowland. Any suggestions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're still waiting back on responses with a specific date. We sent out an invite to a few presenters who would like to present and host our town halls, and we only received a couple responses, and I'm just waiting for to firm up a couple dates or a date.
Okay, so am I missing anything from anybody? Trustee Harris, am I missing anything that we were supposed to do or get done?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. Okay, thanks for anyone else want to add anything about our Bill 64? Okay. School supply update. Kath, do you want to information on this?
I'm just going to start off by saying thank you to Scott and his team, and he's going to do some very big shout outs because it went brilliantly and we're very pleased with it. So thank you, Scott, and your team. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I do want to point out, you know, there was some heavy lifting on this, and I want to say Tracy and Shannon, particularly in purchasing, really did a fantastic job. Starting, you know, from the start with, you know, what sort of things do we generally order, looking through our history of supply orders, and then taking that and going to our vendors and saying, hey, look, guys, we're going to place a big order this summer. Give us some preferential pricing. To building templates for schools to fill in and send to us, to getting things delivered and organized at SCC, and then having those taken out to schools. And it was kind of fun. Kathy and I were laughing. There was a couple of days last week where we actually got away from our desks and got out to the schools, and we haven't been out to the schools for a while because of COVID and various other things, and helped organize into classrooms so many pens and so many rulers and so many erasers for each classroom. And it was actually kind of fun to get away and do things like that. But Tracy and Shannon had this thing just like a military precision. It was fantastic, and I really can't give them enough pats on the back for doing a great job in terms of organizing, accessing everything we need, and getting it at the best possible price that we could. That's why we have a purchasing department, I guess, but we kind of threw this at them last minute, and they really did a fantastic job. So good job.
Thanks.
We've also had
Scott.
We've also had some positive feedback from parents who, you know, said thanks, I don't have to go out shopping, and so we'll keep track of those and put those together as the school year rolls on as well.
Kathy, I did have one parent reach out to me and asked about, you know what, that they were okay about going ahead and paying it, and hoping that this wasn't then something that the schools, because the school division decided to purchase school supplies, this meant then that the schools were going to miss out on something. That's not the case. Can you just clarify that, either you or Scott, with regard to that?
Yeah, and I can say that during the COVID year, we had things last year. We didn't have field trips. We didn't have, you know, music programs. We had a whole bunch of things where we normally have budgets on items for kids and kid learning. And so that balance out from this past year around dollars that we would normally spend on that programming, we're now able to turn around and use on school supplies, means that it's just staying with kids and families.
Thank you. Any comments from any trustees? School supply?
Trustee Pachkowski.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to echo the you know, the feelings of work around the board, and I know from myself personally, I had snuck into the education center. I want to say, I can't remember exactly when, but when I did sneak in, anybody who's familiar with the building there, or the gymnastics, be housed in the gymnasium, I stepped foot into that gymnasium, and just to give you an idea of the sheer amount of supplies that existed, was that gymnasium was full to the brim with school supplies, and organized in a way that was beyond something I could even imagine to start working on. So I think, as Scott said, I think it was, you know, when he used the words military precision, it was fantastic to see. It was overwhelming to see at the same time, of how much school supplies we had purchased for families to make this year, even if it was just a little bit easier for our families. So great work by the school division, great work by the board, and fantastic to see.
Thanks, Trustee Pachkowski. Anyone else?
Yeah, Trustee Nickel.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to caution that this was not necessary. This was this was done this year only. There's no guarantee that it will happen next year. So that will be a decision that the board will make later in the year. But I just want to caution the parents or the people that are listening that the motion was only for this year.
Yeah, the great comment, Don. Thanks very much for reminding people. It is something that we talked about, so thanks for sharing that. Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to move on. You have information 8.6, Arm and Broken Head proposal to subdivide. Scott, is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, there's a number of them here, Paul. It sure seems like you know, there are communities in our division that are growing leaps and bounds. You know, so all for information here. In each case, we generally do, if given the option, which we generally are, of course, request that they set aside a portion of the division for future expansion of our facilities.
Okay, I'm going to stay on 8.6. Is there anything about the Arm and Broken Head that anybody needs more information? Okay, I'm going to move to the 8.7, 8.8, and 8.9. It seems like we seem to have a fair bit of growth that's going on in the Oakbank area, and I'm suggesting, Scott, that we get a little committee together to meet certainly about these three developments. And whether we suggest about meeting with the town, whoever is on that. But we have the three developments to hear. They're there for information. But I do think that we probably should get a group, or you should get a group together with certainly the local trustees and move from there. That would be my suggestion, because it does seem like you know what, if these things take off, what does that mean for us in the schools? And maybe we need to put some heads together. What do you think, Mr. Carlton?
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent idea, and I think you know, the impact could be felt certainly Dougal, Nola, obviously Oakbank. So you know, I think there's 3 or 4 trustees that I think we could probably get together and request a meeting with the town of Oakbank in the area and see you know, what the plans look like long term.
So I'm just going to open it up to Trustee Duma, Trustee Harris. I know Trustee Rowland's not here. Trustee Inslee, is that something that you'd be interested in going ahead and doing? I'm going to go to you, Trustee Harris.
Certainly, it'd be good to know the long-term goals and ramifications as it's going to hit our schools at some point.
Okay, Trustee Duma.
Yep, absolutely interested. Good idea.
Trustee Inslee.
Yep, I'm definitely interested.
So what I'm going to do is I'll work with Scott about coordinating something with you, and I'll talk with Trustee Rowland to see if that she's interested as well, and certainly let Scott work with the 3 or 4 of you that are interested and kind of get some information. Okay, so let's move forward. Okay,
oh,
thanks,
just
Scott.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
if I might interject, just
yes,
for clarification, there's no town of Oakbank. You have to contact the Arma Springfield office.
Yeah,
that's the individuals. Right. You would be contacting that office.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to 8.10, the sale of the truck, the service truck, Scott.
Yeah, just super quick. This is a service truck that has been out of service, and we've kind of used it for a spare and for parts. And you know, it was time to sort of let it go. We advertised in the newspaper and requested proposals, and had one that was you know, by far the best. So I did want to come to the board anytime we dispose of real property and just get a resolution passed for the sale of the truck.
Okay, so be it resolved that the 1997 Ford 250 service truck be sold as is to the highest bidder, Gilbert Luc Boulanger, at a price of $8,111. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by
Trustee Duma.
Trustee Duma, seconded by
Trustee Nicol.
Trustee Nicol. Anybody want to comment on the motion? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. And it passed 8-0. Thank you for that. Command of the Royal Canadian Legion, the 13th annual. So it is something that we've done in the past about putting an ad in. We do need a motion to it. So I'm going to say, be it resolved that the board approve the purchase of a quarter-page color ad, remembrance ad in the military service recognition book, sponsored by the Royal Canadian Legion. Can I get a mover and a seconder?
Trustee Nichol will move it.
Trustee Nichols, seconded by?
Trustee Inslee.
Trustee Inslee. Anybody want to comment on this? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. And it passed 8-0. Thank you very much. Committee reports. I'm assuming here that the policy committee, Trustee Harris, do you have anything to report?
We do not.
Okay. Finance committee, I know Trustee Rowland, the finance committee has not reported. There is not a check register, so nothing in 812, 813, 814. Professional development, we don't have any information back. We do not have a financial monitoring report. We do have some board correspondence information that's there that you'll see certainly from some letters. We have talked about getting on the record that as people have been sending in questions to us, is that to list people's names about the questions you know, that are here and putting that under board correspondence. Trustee Pachakowski, did I miss anything underneath that? Or Kathy or Scott, did I miss that we said that we would put those questions together and list them? Is that correct?
No, I think that's correct. I forwarded, as I received tonight, all questions to trustees. So, you know, I think the important thing is some of them were asked, and others we certainly will endeavor to get back to everybody who asked a question.
So I think that I've tried to answer a number of the questions as I was pointing them to Superintendent Timko. So you're asking a number of those. Where are we? So I think that nice to know information. It's listed there for us. We have our inaugural board meeting on September the 7th. We have a Northeastern Municipal Forum that Don talked about on the 13th. And we have a board meeting on September 21st that's coming up. Scott, are there any additional questions from the public?
Everything I have forwarded on. I believe the last one was about 20 minutes ago, so everything should be with trustees now.
Okay, so one of the questions, Kathy, that came up was a question about kids K to 4 about masks. Now the province has certainly come out with the mask mandate for all kids. But did you want to comment on that, Kath?
Yeah, I think that the answers we've received from Manitoba Education and from any of the public health officials who've been at our meetings with school divisions was that it was a K to 12 initiative for two reasons. Because of the fourth wave Delta variant, you know, uncertainties or unknown pieces, but then also that is our largest unvaccinated population. So protecting our vulnerable students was the answer that we received from Manitoba Education and Public Health.
I think for the most part, those are the questions that we've got. We'll certainly list them. And again, I think that just a reminder, have we had many of our trustees in schools in the last little while? No, of course, they haven't been in schools because of not being there. But they do get into schools as often as they can to listen to things that are going on. Have I missed anything from any trustees with regard to questions from the public?
I'm probably going to make a clarification what I heard Kathy saying, that I thought she indicated that this year, not that there wasn't one last year, but this year there's going to be kind of a push to that the teachers will really educate the students on how to wear masks properly. Is that what I heard? That
Yeah, I think that the piece that we want to push with our vaccinated students would also be some of that modeling around how do they keep social distancing when we don't have the little X's on the ground, and how do we know when we put our mask on and how to put it on? How do we make sure that we're washing our hands before we touch anything? The best I can liken it to is before the recycling days, right? We taught kids about what that needs to look like, and now it's one of those things that just sort of happens everywhere. So I think we want to be working with our kids around, how am I safe everywhere? How do I honor social distancing? How do I make sure that I'm washing my hands? What are all of those things in terms of all of the layers that we're doing and doing the education piece for? How do we live with this? Is that fair, Don?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I heard right what you had said.
Have I missed any from any other trustees? Have I missed any other questions? Jared, have I missed any other questions? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I just for public listening, I think it's fair. I mean, there's been a lot of questions that have come forward. I mean, this evening and prior, but this evening, you know, for to be read out at the meeting tonight. And I'm sorry for myself, I'll seek clarification. We're not reading these questions tonight, and if we aren't, I think we need to be transparent about with our public attendees and with the public as to what we're going to be doing to follow up with them. Then, if we're not going to be addressing each individual question because there were a high number of them, right now I'm not clear what we're doing. I think they deserve to know how we're going to respond to them.
So thanks, Trustee Pachakowski. So many of the questions were similar in nature, and we did answer a number of those questions. Did I pull out John Smith's question and answer John Smith's question? We did answer John Smith's question if another parent did ask that very similar question. We are going to put to a record. I ask all the trustees to check and make sure that we've tried to answer as many of those questions that we have that are down there. And if we've missed some, but let's certainly come back to them and answer them. You heard that you heard that Superintendent Timko is keeping a list of those questions and as they relate. So do you know what, we're trying to, again, get as much information as possible, but if we've missed any questions, certainly let me know. But I think for the most part, we've tried to get as many of those questions together tonight that we asked. So okay. If you've noticed, if you've noticed any questions that we've missed, it's something that we will address, at our next board meeting. Kathy, am I wrong with that? We've tried to address Scott. Is there anything else that I've missed on those questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I might interject.
Go ahead, Trustee Berry.
Trustee Berry, just for clarification, I think it'd make common sense that all the questions are directed to administration and the questions come from administration. So it's a unified, similar opinion from administration. They have more facts than this, strictly the trustees. So I assume that's the role we're going to proceed with. Would it be fair to say?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward, Mr. Chair. Just want to put this out there that, obviously we're challenged even getting our delegation up tonight. So allowing members of the public to speak when we're on Teams can be a bit awkward, but my email address is up there. Certainly if you would like to continue sending questions even after the meeting's over, I'll continue to forward those to trustees. So, we're not going to put a moratorium on questions. They can come anytime, and I'll continue to forward those on.
Oh, no, not at all. And I think that it's a great idea. And I think Trustee Pachakowski had that comment about us trying to get to people's questions. I think that we're asking in the spirit, we're trying to answer in the spirit of those questions. We tried to answer a number of them tonight. And again, we'll go back and check over. All trustees can go back and check over. If you're continuing to hear from people that we haven't answered one of their questions, certainly let's see what we can go ahead and do.
Trustee Pachakowski here.
Yep.
Sorry, were you finished? I'll go after you're finished.
No, go ahead.
I guess my concern with this is, and I hear what Trustee Berry is saying, and I would agree that in most circumstances, all the information that was provided to us in our decision making is always coming from administration with a recommendation. But I do see, like, I mean, now, I'm looking at the most recent one that came in as an example. I mean, there's questions in there that are directed at the board for trustees. So I just think that, in transparency and in the spirit of what we do and who we represent, I'm not comfortable. And were there a lot of questions? Yes. And can we go through each one tonight? I don't know that that's the answer. But I mean, I don't know that I want that it's senior admin's position to respond. And I'll just use one example here. So there was a question that came forward and it said, I would be interested if knowing if any board member has ever observed any children in class while they were wearing masks. Now, I can only answer for myself right now. No, I haven't. But I mean, it's questions like those, and I just use it as an example, is that, I think they're fair questions, and I think it's our job to be open and transparent and engage with our stakeholders and with our community members. And I just feel like we're sort of pushing their questions aside, and that doesn't satisfy me as a trustee. So I don't know how we go about that. I don't know if we put an FAQ together or a frequently asked questions or what, but I just don't. Not every question is directed at senior admin, and I would never expect senior admin to answer all those questions either. So I don't know how we'd go about this, but we did receive a lot, and yeah, so that concerns me. So my suggestion then is, Trustee Pachakowski, is that you and I will work on the questions, so and share with the rest of the board as to where it is. That question that was asked right there, I would share that some trustees are going to say, no, they haven't, and some trustees are going to say, yes, they have. So it's not something as a board we've discussed, but I hear what you're saying, and so do you know what? Let's come up with a process for us to go ahead and do that. Is that good for you? Yeah, it's as long as we're getting back to these people, and if it's not directed at admin, then the board needs to get back to them, and we need to make sure we do that. At least for me, that's important. I don't know how other trustees feel. That's just my opinion. We are a board of 9 trustees. So,
Trustee Nicol.
Go ahead, Trustee Nicol.
Yeah, I'm concerned about some of the questions because I don't know there's any. Even this question says, are you interested if any board has ever observed any child? Well, I can say yes, which I have, but what does that prove? So I think sometimes some of the questions that are being asked, so I say yes, Chair says no, and then I'm not quite sure whether the parent's going to be satisfied, or I'm not quite sure what the parent's trying to get at when they ask that question. It's not only this parent, but I'm not talking about a number of other questions. And some of the other questions to me is border on, I'm not going to spend hours and hours answering a question. I have the right not to answer some questions. Now, if somebody asks a question, well, they talk to my contingency and at what time of the day and what day it was and everything else. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's none of their business what time of the day I talk to them. So some of the questions that they asked, I don't think that as a board that we should be even entertaining the answers to the questions. So, okay, we hear your questions, but it's personal and it's none of your, I'm using the example, it's none of their business when I talk to a constituent or not. I talk to my taxpayers all the time, but do I keep a notebook with me and say, oh, I talked to John Smith at 2:03 on Wednesday afternoon? Well, that's ridiculous. None of us do that. So some of the questions that the parents are asking, I'm just saying that I wouldn't even consider answering them because I'm not going to waste the time, because the fact that I talked to somebody, John Smith, at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon has got nothing to do with what's going to happen. So.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment?
Trustee Inslee, I had a question come in not long ago, and it's I'm not sure, Kathy, if this was something that you addressed, but the parent was asking if their child's struggling to breathe, wearing their mask throughout the day. They're just concerned that they're going to be reprimanded for taking a mask break. Is there something that you can share with regard to our are the kids going to be allowed to take a mask break while they're sat at their desk? This question just came in before the meeting, sorry, and I know, like I said, you covered a lot of ground, so.
Yeah, so I did speak about the mask break, and I said the latest letter that we sent out said that they would be able to take a mask break at the desk, but I haven't received anything formal about that. I'm hearing that it will have to be when they are 2 meters apart, but I don't want to say that unless I have something that is backing it. So I'm assuming in the next couple of days we'll get some clarity on that. In terms of mask breaks for kids, the mask breaks that exist, absolutely when they're outdoors, they are mask free. Absolutely when they are in 2 meters away from someone, they can have a mask break. And if we have desks in classrooms that aren't 2 meters away, then we'll work with staff to have sort of what I think Rob mentioned is a mask-free zone, or some desks and spots set up that are 2 meters apart for someone who might need to take a mask break.
Okay, that was just like my concern, because if they're not 2 meters apart, but the child's in distress because they can't breathe, then what would be the solution to, like, obviously helping the child with having a mask break if they're not 2 meters apart and it's causing distress?
And I think that would be the case when any kid is in distress about any number of things, is that our teachers would work with them for sure to make sure that they are safe and comfortable and in a place where they're going to get the support that they need. And that might be the hallway, that might be working with some of our student support staff, that might be, you know, a number of solutions. But yeah, no, we're not having, you know, kids in distress.
Okay, you know, Kathy, Kathy, that's well said. You know what, our staff, if you know, a kid's bleeding or going to the kid. If a kid's got a mask and, you know, they're in distress, they're working with the child, they're taking them out of the classroom, they're being very caring. Our staff are excellent, certainly about going ahead and doing things. So very well said, Kath, certainly about that. And again, I think that people, they're very passionate about this subject. There are some questions that aren't really questions that people are going ahead and asking. I do think that we do need to try to answer everyone's questions that that are, you know, questions that we need to answer. Kathy, you did talk about the fact is that about helping to compile like the commentary and the questions and give a crack at frequently asked questions. I think that's what we did tonight, Kath, by getting you to answer a number of things that had a very similar feel to it as to where they go. So thanks for putting that together, and I think that that's something then as a board we'll talk about how we do. But I do think that we tried to get that information to people that have asked some of those questions. So thanks for going ahead and doing that. And if any board members thinks that we haven't answered some of those questions, please speak up, and if we've missed any of those questions, please speak up and we'll get to it. So thanks for putting that together.
Trustee Duma, can I just speak for 1 second?
Absolutely.
I think what is really different about this starting year is that we have gone into a place where I thought we never thought we had to go. We thought things would open up, and I think it's like this stuff is very serious. It's serious to parents, it's serious to students, it's serious to all the staff in the building. But at the end of the day, this is a move where the parental rights of students has really taken a huge leap away from them being able to practice their own parenting with kids. And I think that's the big piece, and especially with the young age of the kids. So I really think this is quite serious. I think we'll see where it comes in a couple months, what this ends up like. But I consider that everyone that has shared an opinion, that their compassion is so sincere and meant with the greatest concern for the well-being of their children inside a huge environment where they don't have a lot of control over it. So I hope that everybody's compassionate and everybody supports one another through this whole thing. So that's all I wanted to say. And I want to thank everybody that has emailed or sent something in.
Thanks, Trustee Duma. Appreciate it. Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, I'd like to comment too that again. The number of people that wrote in, usually what's happening is when people are satisfied with what decision we make, they never write in. So I'd like to thank all those people that did write in and support our decision, and all those people that did not write in but also emailed me or phoned me or saw me when I was getting my mail, indicating to me that they thought that we had made the right decision. Sometimes we only hear the vocal minority instead of the silent majority, because we have a very silent majority that is really agreeing with what we're doing. Really happy that we are thinking about the safety of our students and safety of our staff and safety of our visitors. And so I'd like to thank those, because they're not the ones that are vocal, but they're the ones that are really concerned, and also the ones that probably do the voting.
Thanks, Trustee Nicol. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to add also, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'd like to echo what Trustee Nicol. It was really nice to hear all the pleasant emails from a lot of the parents that they are definitely behind our decision for the at our vote regarding the mask. But and he's quite right that the vast majority of people are obviously behind, because everybody doesn't complain. That means they're behind what our decision is regarding the mask. But also everybody has to remember, this is after our vote, it was provincial policy to make this to mandate this. So it's a law. Everybody has to wear masks, and they're doing it for the right reasons. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for all the positive words.
Thanks, Trustee Barry. Anyone else? Okay, so we do not have to move into in camera, and we don't have any items for in camera. So I think that we're good to adjourn. Trustee Paczkowski, have I missed anything?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Kathy Scott, have I missed anything?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chair.
Nope,
All right, so a motion.
Thanks for the great questions.
So a motion to adjourn, please.
Paczkowski makes a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Trustee Paczkowski. We're in adjournment. Good night, everybody. Thanks very much. Thanks to our staff. Thanks for the input. Good night, guys. Have a safe day.
Good night.
Good night.
I know.
Stay well, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.